He's been shot 6 times. Halloweenies. He's been burned alive. Halloweenies. He's lost his head. Halloweenies. Michael Myers can't and won't be stopped, which is why he returns this October. In anticipation, the Consequence Podcast Network presents Halloweenies, a limited series that carves out one Halloween movie a month, leading all the way up to the October 19th release of David Gordon Green and Danny McBride's new movie. You'll get tricks. You'll get treats. You'll get Michael. Tune in for the night we came home.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button while you're listening right now so you can keep up with these interviews. I'm Kyle Meredith, and today my guest, I'm going to be talking with Chrissie from the band Thin Lips. They've got a new record called Chosen Family. We're going to talk about how community plays a large part in this, especially speaking of community, how punk and the queer community have a thread, how Chrissie has dealt with anxiety and fear with mental health. Of course, we'll also talk about one of her favorite topics, that's riffs, and how Sgt. Pepper gave some inspiration to the band for the album cover. It's Kyle Meredith with Thin Lips.
Hi, Kyle.
Well, I want to tell you all, like Thin Lips, you guys got my favorite record right now. It just kind of blew me away when I heard it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's...
Thank you.
No, it's a hell of a record, Chosen Family, and I thought, maybe that's the place to start because I suppose there's sort of a story behind the song, communal and community, right?
Yeah, definitely. Community, Chosen Family. It's like a big thing, especially in the queer community. Sometimes, especially queers, you're born and your family, you may be not so happy, especially historic, I feel like, queer concept. Of course, now it's being embraced by a lot of people, but Chosen Family has been super important in the queer community for a really long time. Have you ever seen, Paris is Burning?
I haven't.
It's a documentary about the balls in New York, that drag balls, and there were, all of these houses of communities of queers that were just, moved to New York City, left home because they had to kind of survive, culturally and as queers in the world.
And I was thinking of the history, you even take punk rock or whatever version of punk rock. Punk and being queer have a long history together. As you as you were coming up, did one of those inform you to the other at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like coming up, going to shows, playing and writing punk music, and then meeting people that I was values aligned with, and kind of building out my chosen family, I think definitely started with rock and roll and then kind of expanded for punk rock, whatever you want.
When you get into that opening track, as we mentioned, is that a true story? Is that you recounting that?
Oh, yeah. So actually the bass player in Thin Lips is a record engineer. He owns The Headroom in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And he was really inspired by that Solange record, all of the kind of sound collages of interviews and words and stuff. And so he just asked if he could interview me and Mikey, and didn't know what was going to come of it. But this is still when we were demoing and trying to write and a bunch of stuff and just paint a picture of where we headed with this. What you just chisel away at it and figure out what it's going to be. But he interviewed me and just asked me a bunch of questions about myself and mostly growing up and being a queer person and a butch woman in the world. And we just sat in the car for 45 minutes and just talked shit, and he recorded it. And then he was kind of picking through everything and trying to figure out what he wanted to use and what he didn't want to use. And I think he was kind of struggling with it. And we all sat down at lunch together, and when we decided on the deadline for the record, and I said, I want to call the record Chosen Family, and I want to do this, I have this idea for the cover, because I spent the last kind of year, some change, going through a really bad breakup and getting a lot of support from my friends to even make the music, and bandmate to even make the music at all. So then he kind of went back and combed through the interview that he did and found that clip of me telling the story about being a young kid and waking up and telling my mom I thought I was gay. Turns out I was right.
Well,
So
because you were what, around 5 years old in that?
yeah, I was a kid. Yeah.
I mean, it's a really powerful way to start the record. I mean, to have that story because there, as you kind of painted, there is an innocence to it, but at the same time, we all know how it eventually turns out too.
Right. Right. Totally. Yeah, it's such a vivid, almost like Sesame Street like memory in my head, like the dream itself.
Well, it's
But
incredible
yeah.
how it all works together, and then just dives right into, like I said, this powerful record. And as I listen to it and hear you talk about it, it seems like there is sort of the two sides. There is the celebration of friends and community, and as you say, your chosen family. But there's also the turmoil that I guess you're dealing with in all of these songs. I hear anxiety in there, and
Yeah.
yeah, and when you have anxious people, I'm surrounded by them. In
Yeah.
in music, we're all part of it. Especially when you're the leader of a band, when you're the front person for a band. I know it's probably an important outlet for you, but are there hurdles that go along with that?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're all so neurotic, don't you think? Like you deal with musicians all the time and artists. It's like there are all sorts of hurdles to my kind of like day to day. I'm like a very, very anxious person. I was born like pretty much classically agoraphobic. I used to be really afraid to go outside. I was afraid to do all sorts of things. And like that has kind of morphed and changed the older I get. But those are the kinds of hurdles that I personally deal with. Like none of them are like logical, or they're all like very illogical fears. But my band definitely helps like a quadrillion percent with like moving through those things and like toward, it's like very nonlinear. Like I'll be like, oh my God, I just did this crazy thing that like 5 years ago I couldn't have even imagined doing. So it could be something so simple, like going for a walk by myself, like without all of my safety stuff with me, just which sounds silly to somebody else.
And to put yourself out front like that, was there a point where, I mean, some people just take to that naturally, regardless of how they are in their personal life. Like, as you're dealing with these things, does that parallel to the stage as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. I like am I do like a nervous PC thing, and it's weird. It's like sometimes I feel really confident and comfortable, but most of the times I'm just like really anxious. And I do it because I love it, obviously, and because it's like a part of my practice just as a person. And like I think that one thing that I've learned is that like that when you don't do things that scare you, you just get scared of more things. So it's like I'm kind of just. One time my brother said something to me that I thought, he's a drummer in Thin Lips, that I was like, oh yeah, I never thought of this, but like, we were on tour. This was a long time ago. We've been touring together for like 10 years, and I was like, I'm just kind of freaking out. I feel like I should go home, and he was like, you're gonna be nervous anyway. You might as well be doing something you love. And that had never dawned on me, like I am. I'm gonna be nervous every day, and like that's just who I am, and like there are ways for me to cope with that, and it's definitely a part of the stage. Like I do like have a lot of like panic and anxiety, and sometimes I'm like, why the hell do I do this to myself? But then I do it, and it feels like it's just like a little bit better. It's so small, it's almost unnoticeable, but like I don't know. 10 years ago, God, I was a lunatic before I play shows. I'd like really get really upset. But now I'm just kind of like, I pace and act like crazy like a quarter of the time.
We spent an entire day here at WFPK doing we called it Mental Health Day, and we invited everybody in, artists that live with these different versions of it every single day, and specialists, and just getting people talking about it. And I guess that's what I've really appreciated with when I hear you talk and reading other interviews, to kind of get into the stories of how these songs came to be this way. Like I do think it's important, the things you're saying, and I do appreciate it.
Y'all did that. That's so great.
Because it needs to be talked
It's
about
so
more.
important. Yeah, it's so important. And like you almost get to a point, like I get to a point where I find humor in it. Like it's not a funny thing, but like I just have to laugh at myself. Like sometimes the way that I react to something because I'm anxious is like it's like totally insane. And then, you just have to laugh sometimes because everybody's dealing with it in some capacity. And the more like you pay attention, the more you see like, it's really easy for me to be like, oh, I'm a lunatic, because there's a lot of ways in which, I am like very classically agoraphobic, or like I have a panic disorder. But like you see it in other people, having mental health issues doesn't mean that you're going to have an emotional breakdown and go to the hospital.
Right.
Everybody is dealing with their mental health issues, I think, whether they're dealing or not, or talking about it or not. I mean, you see it everywhere.
Absolutely. And again, the more we talk about it, the hopefully the better it gets in some way,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to, breeze past the record itself that we're talking about here too, because again, there's so many powerful moments all over Chosen Family, and not just in the stories and the lyrics, but in the music that you're doing here. And
thank you.
as the mantra of riff hard comes along,
Yeah.
I thought I should probably bring up those riffs because it's becoming a lost art. I feel like as even in guitar players, to just be, because it used to be the thing, and the pendulum swings, I guess. But man, hearing you kind of go into that. And I don't know. I guess the general question here is, as you went into this record, what were you looking for in those riffs?
I guess to just expand my riffology. like my bandmate Kyle taught me how to make like drum loops. So we started almost every song like he would bring like an idea to me, like a drum idea or like a basic idea, and I'd write like that's just how I write. Like I just love guitars and I love guitar riffs, and I love riffs in general. Like I have riff hard knuckle tattoos. That was my 30th birthday present to myself. It's not like shred hard. Like I don't care really about shredding, but I love a riff. And so, I'd write sometimes like 10 guitar riffs and then whittle them down to make like 2. And I don't know what I was looking for. I just was like looking for an evolution. I think this is the first record, and I'm just speaking for myself as a part of the band, but I think that that really felt like we're just going to write a record that we love. Like I'm getting older. I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I'm just going to write a record I love and see how that goes, And I think it turned out better than all of us could have hoped, which rocks.
I could bring up any song here and ask about it. I think I'll bring up my favorite, though. What If I Saw You on the Street? Really low in the album, to find it down there. But really just to ask if there's any story behind this one, too, because that's the one that I centered in on the first and just hit repeat and repeat and repeat.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. What If I Saw You on the Street is a combination of 2 separate experiences that I had. This person that I had been dating lived kind of far away and then moved back to town. And I was actually just like, I was going through a breakup and just kind of traveling around with Kyle's computer and interface. And I was actually at Frances's house when I wrote that song. I just had the computer set up in her living room, and I was in her neighborhood where I knew that this person lived. And I was just, it's like thinking about, you just go off into what if, like, what if I saw you and what if it meant something and what if it didn't mean something? And then that also kind of morphed into like the second half of the song is kind of about like having nothing to give to this person that I had just broken up with, who was just demanding all of my time, and how I just kind of end up in these like cyclical patterns of abuse with partners,
Mm-hmm.
that I think we all do. And it actually had a whole nother verse that we cut that kind of resolved it a little bit, but I kind of liked it better unresolved and just ending with that really like silly kind of punk guitar solo that I love so much. I love that solo.
It is a powerful moment, and to have that all encapsulated in a minute 54 seconds, I think you guys made the right choice.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that affirmation.
As I'm sitting there looking at the cover too, is that Divine on the front?
Everybody keeps asking if that's Divine. It's not. That's my best friend from high school. He's a drag queen in the Bay now. Him and his husband moved out there. Like, God, they've been married for 10 years. They've been together for like 13 years, but they moved out to the West Coast, and he's a drag queen called Vanilla Meringue.
Okay.
And he's also like a makeup artist, and he's like killing it. But he was just in this commercial. He might be in another commercial. He's doing makeup for like famous movies. He's just an amazing artist. And I asked everybody on the cover to send me like pictures that they chose, because I wanted them to have a say in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody sent me like a couple of options. And I don't know if Joel only sent me one or not, but But that was definitely the one that got picked because it's amazing.
Yeah, he's got a classic look, obviously, there, if he's getting that comparison.
He's such an
a lot,
artist.
so, yeah.
He's always been like the most amazing artist. He was such an incredible painter, and I remember just like we used to just like hang out, and like I'm a butch lady. He just used to paint my face with makeup, and like I don't wear makeup. I'm not opposed to wearing makeup, but like it's just not a part of my presentation or like gender identity at all.
Mm-hmm.
But he would just like paint my face with makeup all the time. Like felt so good and looked incredible. Like he's just so talented.
Well, it's a classic cover on top of it, the whole thing. I mean, I'll say the entire presentation is very well done on this, and that's very much appreciated. So it's been a lot of
Perry
fun.
Shao from, do you know him? He's an artist from Philadelphia.
Who is it?
Perry Shao.
Oh, no, I don't.
He does a lot of stuff for a lot of people. He did that Shannon and the Clams record cover with the big hand. He's such a talent. His work's everywhere. But I just, I was just like, I just want to do kind of like a gay Sgt. Peppersy, like Rajneeshpuram, kind of like some sort of 60s, 70s vibe thing. And he was like, I got you. So
I love it. I do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, awesome, Chrissie. That's it. Thank you so much for taking the time, in the van today to talk about this and, the Chosen Family record. It's incredible. It really is.
That's super kind. Thank you.
All right.
It means a lot, really, truly.
And we'll see you around Louisville at some point soon.
I hope so. Yeah.
All right. Take
I
care.
love Louisville. So long.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, my thanks to Chrissie from Thin Lips. That new record is called Chosen Family. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with these interviews, whether you're listening at YouTube or iTunes, or wherever you're getting your podcast from. Hit that subscribe button right now, and then give it a rating. Leave a review. After that, you can head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
It'll be my pre-nap. I'm like a car napper, I'm like up for a couple hours and then I snooze for a really long time and then we're just at the show. So